Let's start off with this. This is Howard Webb. He joined Jim White and Simon Jordan this morning, as I mentioned. After audio from VAR decisions across the season were released publicly for the first time ever. Have a listen to this. I thought this was fascinating, actually. Have a listen. Let's see how VAR overturned Chelsea striker Kai Havertz's goal against Liverpool and how Howard believes the positives of VAR outweigh the negatives.
It's a sure Come off his chest. Wait a minute. On-field decision's goal because I think it hits Havertz's chest.
Okay, mate, just checking the goal.
Point of contact there.
That's one.
I'll just play through into
play
back
through.
of net.
Yeah, so just frame it on the arm. Right, that's clearly arm.
Yeah.
Tails.
Yeah.
I recommend you disallow the goal. It's handball, leads immediately to the ball in the net.
Okay, so it's
attacker.
factual, so we're going...
Factual handball.
Penalty spot.
It's on the penalty spot.
Everything we do is with the intention of making the game better. This year alone, we've seen 97 clear errors rectified by VAR. We're working hard to be as efficient as we can be and reduce errors. We think there's a net positive to the game. We think that the times that we have to slow the game down to do the diligence of a check is a price worth paying to ensure that we don't make clear errors that can impact the outcome of a game, that impacts the outcome of a relegation battle or battle to get into Europe.
I thought it was fascinating to hear that for the first time. I really did enjoy listening to that. Do you think that's something that we need to hear as football fans? We need to hear every single time there's a game?
I would like to hear it live. I know that's after the effect, but I want to hear live footage of that going on.
Like you do in rugby?
And cricket. You hear it in cricket as well. Yeah, I think that'd be perfect, just to see what they're seeing, what angle they're coming with. I would 100% love to see that, hear that.
Okay, me too. So we'll take calls on that, 03717223344. There are 4 sort of topics we're going to run through. So let's move on to the next one. Howard Webb also spoke about how important it is to humanise referees, but doesn't think post-match interviews are appropriate because they'll only be critical.
I want them to be seen for the people that they are, the football-loving, dedicated professional that they are. I worry just a little bit about the dynamic of them only being spoken to post-game when something's gone wrong. Mm-hmm. So we're not in the same world as players and coaches who are interviewed when they've scored a hat-trick or made a great substitution late.
But you are in the same space when managers are being interviewed when they've lost games and teams are getting relegated and players are getting booed off the pitch.
Yeah, that's true. That also happens, of course. We accept that as well. But in our world, I can foresee a situation where we'd only get spoken to when there's a mistake or perceived mistake. But maybe that's somewhere where we have to move to. We're looking at all sort of aspects of ways we can humanise, because I think if people see us for those football-loving professionals that I believe we are, who are contributing positively to the game most of the time, then the acceptance level of decisions will be better. The way we're perceived is better, and that's something I'm keen to do, change the way that we're perceived.
It's nice and refreshing to hear that. I can understand why he would say that about if every time a wrong decision, what we consider a wrong decision, was made, we would then get to hear the referee. I think we'd all be very critical, and understandably. Do you think it's something that will happen sooner or later in the game? I
quite like that. I mean, that's by the sounds of it, it's going to be down the road, that, because I think he has got a point, and I agree with you. I think that we'd only want to hear from referees when we think they've dropped a clanger. And that's as simple as that. How have you missed that? Like, we want to hear about them. But you're right, for the good work that they do, no one really wants to hear a referee speak, do they? If the referee's had a good game, you don't want him to go in after the game and go, yeah, well, I think I refereed very well. You don't hear that.
No, because they should be refereeing.
Exactly. But when they drop a clanger, that's when you think, get him in there. And I can understand what he's saying. But back before VAR, referees had to make a decision. They couldn't lean on anyone else. They could go for fistula, did you see anything, linesman, but they had to make a decision ultimately. But now, if they miss something, they're not bothered about missing it, but they're almost like, well, okay, but I know they'll pick it up if I miss something. So they're not as accountable as they once were. I
think the problem we've got nowadays is, back in the day, whether or not they gave it or not, it was a one-off decision, and you could never, during the game, go back and correct it.
No.
So we just went, how can he not see that's offside? Okay, didn't, and that's it. But nowadays, they've got the opportunity to correct a wrong.
And they still don't.
And they don't, and then that gets us annoyed because they have that opportunity.
They've got all the technology there in front of them, they're not using it.
Whereas we would just let it go last time because it's done, it's gone. They obviously didn't see it. There was obviously a player in his way. He couldn't see he was offside. End of story.
Even with the offside, I get it. Offside's black and white, it's factual, I get that. But there are times when you think they're drawing that, it's that minimal.
The armpit.
That you just
annoys
go,
the hell
do you
out
know
of me.
what? Come on. Just let it go.
Why don't they do it via the boot?
You're campaigning for that, aren't you?
I've never understood that. It's the armpit, the sleeve, the armpit. Drives me insane. It's the boot. Then it's fact. Is the boot further forward than the other boot? Boom.
Yeah.
You'll never get an argument, ever.
Oh, no, they'll find one.
Oh, you can't with the boot. You can't with the boot. Let's move on, shall we? Howard Webb then moved on to talk about how players coming into the VAR room to help with decision-making isn't necessarily the answer. And people like Danny Murphy will realise that it's not really that easy as it looks.
Until you've sat in the chair and actually had a go at it under pressure, I think you'll never really know. I mean, I respect Danny's career on the field, and I also know, obviously, he clearly has a really good understanding of the game. He analyses it now for a living, and therefore, putting him in that chair, he might be really good at it. We don't know until we see. But I think people understand and recognise that refereeing's tough. I think they know it's not an easy job, but they've never done it. But they recognise it's hard. I think most people assume that being a VAR is easier than it is, because you sat watching screens, you're watching the game. But like I said earlier, it's not just like watching the game. I went to a seminar a few weeks ago in Madrid, and I had a go at being a VAR, probably for the first time in an actual game situation. It was obviously not a competitive game, but, there's lots happening. It's almost like patting your tummy and rubbing your head at the same time. You're watching a situation at one end that could be a penalty, but the penalty's not given. And very quickly, the play moves up to the other end because the game's still ongoing.
Sure.
And there's another penalty appeal 10 seconds later, but that's not given either. So you're still checking the first one, hang on, thinking, give me the angle. I need to go through a cycle of angles to see whether or not the non-award of a penalty is clearly wrong. At the same time, I've got another potential penalty coming up at the other end, and the game's still ongoing.
Yeah, but play will stop at some stage, and play will only continue when you've come to your decision.
Or have more than one person in there.
Yeah, it is easy.
Yeah.
You've got a screen, you've got a rewind button, you've got an enlarge button.
You've got different angles.
Yeah, why is it difficult?
Yeah, no.
It's the easiest job in the world, isn't it?
I get it, and I can understand it from a referee's perspective. He's thinking he wouldn't want a player to go in there and make their job better. Because these guys have trained for a long time to become top quality referees.
Right.
And it's a little bit like, you know what I mean? Again, I'm not being disrespectful, but it's a little bit like, the YouTubers dipping into the boxers' arenas, all of a sudden taking over. Referees would feel a little bit like, well, hold on a second here. We're the referees. Let the next players in.
If you know the rules, it is easy, isn't it?
I think so, but I think he's just proposed a load of excuses, really, because I think, as you said there, play doesn't resume until you've looked at every angle. And if it takes, I don't mind it taking a bit longer if they get the correct decision.
No, it's when it takes a long time
and they get it wrong still.
Yeah, or they don't ask the referee to have a look.
Yeah,
that annoys me.
Yeah, even if you're unsure, just go and have a look. And that's where the previous caller, I can't remember his name, he said they've become a little bit lazy.
But the referees, not the VAR.
No,
the
referees.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on because I want to take calls. Howard Webb also insisted that referees get an unfair level of stick.
I've got to say, I think the level of intensity and scrutiny has risen since I was last involved in the English game. I came off the field in 2014. I worked for a year within the backroom staff and then went away to the US and managed the referees in Major League Soccer. But the kind of lack of forgiveness these days is pretty obvious to me. And the officials and the players, everybody, of course, on the field, on the sidelines, that are working under extra pressure scrutiny, it all means so much to everybody, and that's what makes it great as well. Of course, we understand that's the place to be. We all have to be the best we can be to keep pace.
Are they unfairly treated? Do they get more stick than they should?
I think they get more stick probably now because there should be no excuses. I think that's why they get more stick nowadays, because, as you said earlier, it's different if before VAR the referee misses a decision and everyone's like, how did he not see that? Well, he's only got one take. He's not got camera angles and all that. But I think the reason why they get so much stick nowadays is because the evidence is there. They've got all the tools.
And we all see it.
We all see it. The tools are there. And they can rewind, fast forward, change the angle, everything.
Was it Evan Ferguson? No, was it Danny Welbeck and he hit Evan Ferguson's waist?
No, hit McAllister's hip.
McAllister's hip. Sorry. McAllister's hip, it hit.
Yeah.
We all saw that on the replay.
And they didn't.
That's why they get stick.
Exactly. The tug on Lewis Dunk's
shirt.
Stamp on Matoma's foot. These are the things why.
With a shirt pull, right? How can you not see that? That's why they get stick. Because I'm not trained and I watch it once and I go, he's pulled his shirt there.
I can give it Brentford versus Arsenal. Forgetting to draw the lines.
Yeah.
You've got one job.
Yeah. That's why they get stick.
That's why they get stick nowadays. More so than maybe before.
talkSPORT Drive with Andy Goldstein. Monday to Friday afternoon from 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.